We learned today some truly despicable news about ICE's conduct here in Oregon. I would like to say that nothing should shock us anymore when it comes to the inhumanity, cruelty, depravity of ICE, but I found this story particularly disturbing. The Oregonian is reporting that on the morning of January 16th, a mom and dad tried to take their sick 7-year-old daughter to the hospital. Her family was trying to get her to the emergency room, and she never made it because when they parked, their vehicle was surrounded by 3 trucks and a bunch of ICE agents poured out, handcuffed the entire family despite their pleas to see a doctor for their daughter who had been bleeding from the nose since the previous night. They hauled off the entire family and did not let that child see a doctor. It's important to note that this family, the Crespo-Gonzalez family, is here in the United States on asylum. They are legally allowed to be here. They are working through the legal asylum process. In order to try to claim asylum in the United States, you must enter into the country, file the paperwork, and go through that process, which can take quite a long time. They are not here illegally at all. Although it should be abundantly clear by now that this was never about illegals at all. I just want to point out that if we were at war with another country and our soldiers denied necessary medical care to a child, that would be a war crime. It's called denial of humanitarian access. We are watching ICE do it again and again and again in the United States. We had reporting from Minnesota, from nurses and doctors, that their patients undergoing chemotherapy and other necessary life-saving medical treatment are afraid to go to the hospital because they are afraid that ICE is going to abduct them. When I posted this story to my Facebook page, I got several comments from people in other states, including Texas, I believe, who said that this is happening where they are as well. ICE is basically waiting. They're sitting in wait outside hospitals, and then they are snatching people who are trying to get to the emergency room. 7-year-old children are being zip-tied and hauled away when they should be taken to a doctor. There was one instance where someone had a ruptured appendix because ICE denied them access to care, kept them from being able to enter, delayed their care, delayed their access to a doctor. These are life-threatening situations. It's just unbelievably cruel and inhumane. A year ago, one of Donald Trump's first acts in office was to repeal a Biden-era policy that forbade ICE from going into hospitals, churches, and schools. And I knew when he did that it was going to be really bad. That it was like, that is just a line that nobody should cross. And Donald Trump and Greg Bovino and Kristi Noem and all these ICE chuddy fail sons, they are crossing it on a daily basis. And they've got no qualms with it because, after all, Stephen Miller said, round up 3,000 immigrants a day. I don't care if they are criminals or not criminals. By the way, y'all will all get a bounty for every person that you abduct and stuff into a detention facility, even if they're on their way to the emergency room. Just think about that per head bounty. Don't think about how you're going to sleep at night. Don't think about the ramifications for your conscience for the rest of your lives. Don't think about what you're doing to destroy families, traumatize children, risk the lives of children. I want you to just think about this for a moment. In the land of the free and the home of the brave, this is what life is like in 2026 for millions of people. If your child is gravely ill or seriously injured, their life is at risk, you have to make a decision about whether you will risk your entire family being abducted if you try to get that child to the emergency room to get care. But it's so much worse than that, because let's say that you do manage to run the gauntlet of ICE agents who are at the bus stop, who are in the parking lot, who are waiting outside the hospital. There is no sanctuary for you once you get inside either. Weeks ago, I made a series of videos that hardly anybody saw, talking about a letter that the Oregon Nurses Association put out, basically whistleblowing, saying, hey, Oregon's nurses are seriously concerned that administrators in Oregon hospitals are collaborating with ICE, are allowing ICE to come in and violate the constitutional rights and the HIPAA rights of patients in the hospital. They expressed profound concern that administrators were allowing ICE to come in and violate the constitutional and HIPAA rights of immigrants in the hospital. They were making it extremely difficult for nurses and other healthcare providers to provide necessary service, to comply with the law, and to protect their patients. They listed instance after instance where ICE came in, took patients out AMA. Many of these patients were people who were in the hospital because ICE beat the shit out of them, because ICE battered and bruised and brutalized their bodies. They were in there because of what ICE did to these people. And then the ICE agents not only were intimidating medical staff, they were also making sure that immigrants were not getting necessary testing, necessary medication, and they were frequently taken out against medical advice. Nurses expressed concern that ICE was overhearing private, confidential medical conversations in a violation of HIPAA laws. ICE was intimidating medical staff. They were getting in between staff and their caregiving decisions. These are fail sons who don't have a college degree, much less a medical degree, who were allowed by hospital administrators and hospitals in the Portland metro area, legacy hospital system, to interfere with the care of these patients. And Oregon's nurses put out a letter and were like, this is untenable. Our conscience doesn't, our licensing, our medical ethics, like this is so wrong on so many levels, and we have to speak out. Nurses were disciplined. Some were put on administrative leave for doing things like explaining to immigrants in the hospital what their rights were, like giving them a know your rights card or talking about their constitutional rights, their due process rights. They were chastised. They were disciplined. They were put on leave. This isn't a sanctuary state. Oregon is a sanctuary state. What are the hospital administrators? What the fuck are y'all doing? What do you know what side of history you're coming down on? I imagine if it's happening here, it's much worse in other states where state and federal government is far more friendly to these ICE criminals. In response to this news breaking today, the Oregon Nurses Association put out yet another statement expressing their deep concern over the detainment of this family, emphasizing that no parent should have to choose between their child's health and the risk of detention. I would say the risk of abduction and false imprisonment. They pointed to provision 8.2 of the Nurses Code of Ethics, stating that nurses must stand up for human rights violations. At my Senator Jeff Merkley's recent town hall, one of the constituents actually spoke on this issue. She said that her friend was one of the nurses who'd been put on administrative leave. And she stood up and said, where are elected officials? Where are y'all? We need you to help us. In Oregon, hospital administrators are helping ICE commit an ethnic cleansing and violate people's rights, their HIPAA rights, their constitutional rights, their due process rights. And like, where are our elected officials stopping this? Today, ONA said they are urging Oregon's healthcare leaders and elected officials to ensure hospitals remain safe places for all families. They stressed the importance of protecting access to care and standing with immigrant communities to demand accountability. I could not find an update on how this 7-year-old girl is doing, if she was given adequate medical attention, if she's okay. Obviously, she's not okay. She and her family have been abducted and stuffed into a concentration camp. There was a report a few days ago that said that immigrants in detention centers around the country, particularly in Texas, are not receiving access to appropriate medical care, and they have not been since October, and that interruption could continue for as much as 6 more months. We've heard cases of immigrants in detention who have cancer, who are not being given their chemo. There are so many instances of people's basic medical needs not being met. These are human rights violations on just an unbelievable scale. And on top of that, like, let's say that this little girl did get care. ICE is traumatizing an entire generation of children. This is a family who came here on asylum. They were fleeing violence in their home country, and they came here for a better life and protection. And their family was abducted, trying to get their daughter to the emergency room. And I'm constantly thinking about what our government is doing to all these children. Just the tremendous trauma that these kids are going to have for the rest of their lives. And I know that millions of us are organizing on a daily basis. We are resisting and doing everything that we can, and we will be successful in stopping this. But I just feel such a tremendous sense of urgency thinking about all of these children who are being traumatized. Their childhoods are being stolen from them. For what? For what? So that Greg Bovino can dress up like a member of the Schutzstaffel and terrorize little children? He bragged about abducting a 5-year-old. So that Stephen Miller, who's the kind of kid who lit cats on fire, so that Donald Trump, whose daddy didn't love him, so that these fragile men can feel a tiny bit powerful. We're letting millions of children be traumatized, denied access to medical care, denied their childhood, denied their liberty. And thank you to Oregon's nurses for continuing to advocate for these families.